If you're watching this video, then you probably need a little help with shading. But don't worry, because I got you. I'm going to give you a full breakdown on how shadows work, and believe me, it's a little more tricky than you think. 3 of the best ways to shade, and then teach you how to apply these to real-life drawings. Let this be a warning. Don't skip any part of the video, or else that'll be the reason why you still can't shade. So listen up unless you want to keep shading drawings like this. Trust me, smudging won't solve all your answers. Okay, so first things first, 99% of the time, your drawings will have a light source. This can be the sun, or a lamp, or anything else that produces light. Okay, so it's kind of obvious that where your light is where the lightest part of your drawing will be. And therefore, on the opposite side will be your shadow. But that's not it, because your light source will actually bounce off any object surrounding it. And therefore, for a drawing like this, where the only object is this floor, there will be a slight highlight at the bottom of the ball. This is called the bounce light. And obviously, aside from the bounce light and the main light source, there's the reflected shadow, which is basically just exactly what it sounds, a reflection of the object. Okay, so let's try this with our light source being on the top right corner of the ball. The light will be projected on the top right corner, and therefore the shadow will be on the bottom left corner. But remember, there's a such thing as bounce light. So if we have something like a blue wall on the side, then guess what happens next? The light will bounce off and reflect towards the ball. So even though the light source may not be blue, there'll still be a slight blue tint on the right side of the ball. And of course, don't forget our original shadow. You can also intensify shadows by darkening them up, and even adding highlights where the light is. Your highlights could be brighter or darker depending on the shine of your object. But we're not done here, because our main light source could actually have color. So say it's the sun and it's yellow. Then that means the beams will be yellow, and therefore the brighter and highlighted side will have a yellow tint to it, along with our blue bounce light. Also, do keep in mind that the ball could be any color that you want. So now you know how shadows work. But how do you actually shade? Because I'm sure you've seen 100 ways. But here are the top 3 most useful that will come in handy when drawing any type of style. Our first technique is called hatching, and it's basically where we draw thin lines coming out of our darkest part. We can then add in a mid-tone of more thin lines, and then a darker tone as we head towards the darker shadows. This will create a sort of blending effect, which you can see here. Sometimes it helps to add some longer strokes that can go all the way up to the top, but don't overdo it. Okay, our next technique is called cross-hatching. It's basically the same thing as hatching, as we'll use these little thin lines, and like hatching, we'll flick them out in fast motions like this. Make sure you go fast and flick them in straight lines that all go in the same direction. Now repeat in the opposite direction. Make sure you're only covering where you want the shadows to be. Like hatching, go over with your mid layers and later with your darker tones, all in the same directions of your hatches. Hatching and cross-hatching are best for anime and cartoon styles, while our final form of shading is best for realistic styles. But you can always be creative and mix them around. So this is probably the most common way of shading. All you have to do is sketch lightly very next to each other with each line. You can start dark and gradually make your way lighter as you go towards the light source. It'll help you a lot if your strokes are all in the same direction. Keep them close together and don't push too dark straight away. A quick tip is that you can go in the opposite direction towards the edges like this. And your favorite part, you can even use your finger to help it blend. Let's try applying these 3 shading skills to this character right here. And I want you to comment down below your favorite. I split it up in 3 parts, the top part being hatching, middle cross-hatching, and bottom blending. After finding the outline of where I'll shade, I begin with my lightest tones in hatching. Remember, shadows are usually in parts of the drawing that are further from you, or covered up by something else. After this, I can begin with my midtones. And remember, not every drawing has bounce light. If there's no object surrounding it, then there's no bounce light. Also, don't be too strict with yourself. Some artists like to have the most detailed and intense shadows, while some keep it nice and simple. Sometimes you don't even need to blend. All you need is a light shaded spot, but you do what you like most. There is also a million other ways to shade. The ones I'm showing you in this video are just the 3 most common ways. And the best thing about these 3 is that you can use them in basically any style. Time for cross-hatching. Remember, just like hatching, start going in one direction, and repeat going in the other. Start with your lighter tones and get darker as you go. Cross-hatching is definitely one of my favorites. Time for blending. All the lines need to be nice and close to each other, and again, start light and make your way dark. But this time you can even use things like Q-tips to help you out. Since Q-tips are much sharper, it's going to be much easier for you to blend smaller areas than to use your finger. Time to learn to use bounce light. Finally, it's time to combine all of our skills to shade this mannequin. We know where our light source is, we know where our bounce light is. Again, I split it up into 3 sections so you can see how it looks like with each type of shading. Begin with our light tone. Since there's bounce light, I'll leave a little bit of white space on the right side to act as our highlight for the bounce light, as well as a much bigger highlight on the left side, since her main light is much brighter. Time for cross-hatching. Same thing, start light, make your way dark. This is also preference. You can start dark, make your way light. It just depends on you. This is just the way I prefer. For lighter areas, you can still add hatching. Just keep it light and only in one layer. Okay, it's finally time for our blending. Remember to draw your shadows in the most hidden parts. This is areas behind things like the hand back there, or areas further from the light source like the inside of the thigh. Remember, there's technically 2 light sources because of the bounce light. Using the Q-tip, we can blend them out. After using the Q-tip, it also helps a bunch to go back with pencil to add in those finishing touches. If we imagine our bounce light is blue, we can either add in our bounce light using the same technique that we used to shade, or you could technically just fill it all in, but very lightly, because the bounce light is much lighter than your main light source. Don't forget about your reflected shadow. This should also start dark and make its way light. And there you go. But wait, because this is the most important part. No matter how good your shading is, you should still have a good base and not draw poses like this. I'm sorry, but if your poses look like this, then make sure you check out my last video before moving on to this one.